Hey, what is up guys, this is D-Tech Paradise and today I've got the Moto G60 for you. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So first, let's talk about the performance. This phone works on stock Android and is running on Android 11. This thing might get the Android 12 upgrade, but we don't know when and if it will get. But Moto is claiming that it will get the Android 12 update, so we'll see. Now because it works on stock Android, it is really smooth and all the apps run pretty good. It has a 6GB of RAM and a 128GB of storage, which is quite sufficient. Now it runs on Qualcomm Snapdragon 732G processor, which is an 8nm processor, which means the multitasking will be really good on this. And because this thing has a 6GB of RAM, it won't fall short of the RAM storage. Now it also has an AI engine which detects and observes what app you use the most and increases the performance accordingly, which is pretty amazing. The games on this thing are also pretty well. Now it has a game launcher inbuilt. Now you don't have to open it manually because as soon as you turn on a game, it turns on itself. What it does, all it does actually, is just put the phone on DND mode and reduces all the background activity, so the game performance is really good. I've played Asphalt 9 a lot on this phone and that game was working just fine. Now I've played a lot of Asphalt 9 on this thing. Now when I started the game, it was having a few frame drops at first, but once the game was started, it was pretty smooth and there were no lags. I don't know what graphics level it was working on. I don't think so Asphalt 9 has any settings for that, but you can easily play Call of Duty and PUBG games at least medium settings. It is capable of doing anything literally. You can also edit 1080p videos on this thing if you do that on a phone, because in a phone it is a little impractical to edit videos, but if you really want to, you can actually edit 1080p videos on this. Now the performance stuff and all is fine, but how does the display look? It has a 6.8-inch 1080 by 2460 resolution. Basically it's a full HD plus display with HDR10, but it's an LCD display and not an AMOLED, which seems like a compromise, but it's really not. It is a fairly bright display and the colors are pretty good too, and even though the display is 1080p, it can still play 4K videos, which is pretty cool. Even though the display is just 1080p, the fact that it can play 4K videos is quite satisfying. Now it also has HDR10, as I said earlier. If you are watching any HDR content, that would look really good on this. I have personally not watched a lot of HDR content on this, but if you do, it would look pretty amazing. It also has a 120Hz refresh rate display, which means that every single scroll is going to be smooth. Not only that, while you use the phone, it is pretty smooth too because of the 120Hz refresh rate, which not a lot of phones have, surprisingly. This one does, and it is amazing. Now this is not the best display you can get because it's not an AMOLED and it's an LCD, but you will really get used to it and it's not that bad. Now overall this display is very good and it has a punch hole in the middle, which is much better than a notch. Personally, I don't like notches. And also the touch sensitivity is really good too. Now it is a big phone. It is a 6.8-inch display. Now a big phone is not everyone's cup of tea. You might get used to it, but you might not. But I have seen most people get used to big phones, and once you start using this phone, all the other phones will look really small. But I'm pretty sure most people will get used to it. Now we are gonna talk about the cameras. So it's a triple camera setup. The main sensor is a 108 megapixel f1.9 aperture. It's a quite wide lens, an 8 megapixel ultra wide f2.2 aperture, and it has a 118-degree view and a 2 megapixel f2.4 depth camera, which is also used for macro shots. Now it might seem like the camera quality is decreasing with every sensor I talk about, but the resolution doesn't really matter. Let me explain. Now you might have heard about this a lot, that megapixel count does not define the quality of the camera. There are a lot of phones which has a lot of megapixels in it, but it does not take really good photos. Now this is a stock Android phone and Moto has done a really good job in optimizing the stock camera on this. Now as I said, in a phone it really boils down to image processing. A lot of the new phones these days really do have nice sensors, but you can't upgrade more than that. So companies are really trying to optimize their image processing, and in that Moto has done a really good job. The photos that are taken on this phone are phenomenal, and the image processing is so great that even if it had a 64 megapixel camera, it would have performed just fine. It has tons of modes you can play with especially the night vision, which lets you take pictures in a really dark environment and makes it crisp, clear and bright, and it's amazing. It does an amazing job in night vision. Other than the standard photos on this thing are also phenomenal, and for this price is the best camera setup you can get. Now in terms of video, it can shoot up to 4K 30 frames per second, and the videos are also pretty good, and the stabilization is amazing. Actually, I don't have a DSLR to shoot my YouTube videos with, and I shoot most of my YouTube videos with another phone, which is the Asus Zenfone 5Z, but I'm gonna be replacing that phone with this Moto G60 because its camera is so good that it can compete with a lot of 4 or 5 years old flagship phones. So now after this video, actually all of my YouTube videos is going to be shot with this phone, and it's going to be a daily driver for me for like a few years, so it's a pretty good phone. And for this price point, I don't think you can get a better camera setup than this. Now let's jump on to the battery performance. It has a 6000 mAh battery, which is a big battery, and in my personal use, it has lasted for at least 2 days, sometimes even 3 when I don't use it too much. If you have a very heavy usage, it will still last for the whole day. Now on average, it will at least last for 1.5 days. It also has a 20-watt fast charger included in the box, and it tops off your phone from 0 to 100% in less than 2 hours. So it's pretty good, and because it's a bigger battery, it's gonna take a while to charge a little bit, but it will at least give you around 60% of battery in under 1 hour. Now let's talk about the design and build quality. It's mostly made of plastic, but it doesn't look like plastic. It has a really cool glass finish, and that color I have is dynamic gray. There's also a frosted champagne version, which is in my opinion doesn't look that great, but the dynamic gray looks amazing, and it's not even completely gray. Its camera module is sort of like a pine green color. The build quality is really solid, and it feels durable, but it weighs around 225 grams, which is quite heavier than average phones, but you get used to big and heavy phones after a while. Now it has a dedicated Google Assistant button too. It just lets you open Google Assistant faster, but it's currently not remappable, which is pretty disappointing actually, but they can easily fix that with an upgrade, but I don't think they would. I personally use Google Assistant a few times sometimes, and it's pretty handy button. So overall, this phone is really great, and I would easily recommend this to anyone, and I'm going to use it as my daily driver for a few years. So that is it for today guys. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure that you hit that like button below, and if you like a lot of tech videos, you can also subscribe and hit the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching. This is Tech Paradise, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay tuned.